All right, this is the jpeg2RAW podcast, show number 40. And tonight we have a special guest, Ben Canales. Oh, you're still muted, Ben.
There we go. Okay, I think I'm back now. Yeah, Canales, you said it right.
Okay. And we're coming in on a special night, and I'll mention why in just a second. But Tim, you're here with us tonight too.
Yes, good evening, Mike. Good evening, Ben.
Yep.
Do not see anything on the website, though, the live show. It's not streaming.
Yeah, you might have to refresh because it says it's streaming. Whoa.
Oh, there we are.
Okay. All right, and going along with those technical difficulties, we didn't have a show this past Tuesday because if you hear my voice is a little different, I got food poisoning from, I believe, lunch.
Oh,
So
man.
you're probably wondering what crazy thing did I have for lunch? I had a chicken sandwich from Chick-fil-A. So that's not a crazy lunch. I just, I'm not positive that's what it was, but it hit me around 4:30, and I barely made it home.
Oh, man.
And as much as I tried, that is just not something you can speed along. It has to run its course.
That's right.
Literally.
Thank you, Ben, so much for agreeing to reschedule to tonight.
No problem, man.
Because I really wanted to get you, in here tonight and in here this week. And so what else is going on this week, Tim? I don't know if you probably don't spend too much time in our Facebook group.
I go in and out, but not nearly as much as you are, or Kathleen.
Our Facebook group is exploding. If you want to communicate with other photographers and put up photos and discuss the photos and just discuss different topics, our Facebook group is a great group to join. And some of our previous guests are even come in. We have Mike Oblinski is in there now, posting quite often. And the group is just really doing a good job of helping each other out. Because what jpeg2RAW is all about is that transition from the beginner, just the photographic transition or journey, however you want to say it, is always trying to improve. And that's what the group is doing a good job of, and a lot of good topics being brought up in there. So if you're interested in joining, go to Facebook and just search for jpeg2RAW. And if you want to talk to the show, I know we have a lot of people who are now listening to Stitcher Radio. You can send us an email at podcast@jpeg2RAW. You can come to the Facebook group or go to our website, which is jpeg2RAW also. And if you, again, I've been saying this for the last few weeks, if you listen on Stitcher Radio, which is audio only, and you're thinking, wow, this show would be so much better if there was video, there is video. And tonight's guest is somebody you will definitely want to see some of the video. So even if you don't want to download it, I listen to a lot of them on my phone, so I also listen to a lot of podcasts audio-wise. But if you want to see the video, you can always just come out to the website and look at it there. And we'll have links in the show notes to a long list of things that Ben has done that we'll be going over tonight. So, and speaking of Ben, Tim asked me this right in the pre-show, and I had already planned to talk about this. I've been asked before, how do you find some of these guests? And it's a rant. It's a lot of things. Sometimes I might ask Ben, like, who could I get to come on a show that Ben, would want to come and see on the show? And sometimes I can get those people, sometimes I can't. People out in chat have offered people. Kathleen has found some, Tim's found some, I found some. But what I do a lot of times is just add them into a spreadsheet and then go back later and do some searching. So somewhere along the line, I think I found one of Ben's photos on Google Plus.
Very cool.
And I added them to a spreadsheet, and I'm searching through the spreadsheet. All right, who can we have next? And do a little more research because I didn't do very much research at first. And I said, oh my God, how did I miss this guy for all this time? He is incredible. And at that time, I had only seen, Ben, I don't know if you would say you got two main lines going. You got the star photography. Now you got this time-lapse thing.
Yeah.
I was just amazed with the star stuff.
Cool.
And I still am amazed. And the time-lapse stuff is just mind-boggling. Also, so you were a great find, and I can't believe it's taken me this long to ask you to come on the show.
Thanks.
I have to agree. I was looking at the pictures, and it's amazing.
Cool.
I was telling Mike before I had considered myself at one point an advanced amateur, Man, I'm nowhere near that. I'm going backwards. When I see the people that we have on here, I mean, phenomenal.
Well, that's the thing that
the
people.
internet's made available.
That's the thing that people like Ben are doing, and it's it's part of the show. For me, anyway, the reason I created it is for me to get better. But the more I have people like Ben on the show, I think I'm getting worse because I realize how bad I am.
Oh man, there's a lot of good shooters out there online. Isn't it amazing?
There is some amazing stuff. So, Ben, why don't you tell us about how you got into photography, and maybe talk about how, because you now live on the West Coast.
Yes.
And what brought you from the East Coast over to the West Coast?
Sure. Yeah, originally from New Jersey, born and raised out there. Been living here in Oregon for about 4 years now, and I had some traveling work that kind of dried up and was looking for something different. And the beauty of the Pacific Northwest just drew me in. So it's kind of funny. I came out here to join up with a guy who does wedding photography. I was going to start doing some creative stuff with him. And we started doing shoots together, and then somewhere along the line, a shoot got canceled, and I went out hiking instead of going to a wedding shoot. And then I was done from there on out. Like every weekend was climbing mountains or exploring or driving. So that kind of started the love affair with Oregon. And then, sort of put aside the photography. I've been into video and graphic design and animation, that stuff in the past, and put that all aside and just kind of had fun with the outdoors and was working sort of jobs to pay the bills. And I've done woodworking in the past. And so anyways, working at a custom cabinet shop and had a hand injury. Hand got pulled onto a table saw and chopped fingers up. So yeah, so I was sitting around on rehab, and after like 2 weeks of pain pills and Oprah, I was like, man, I can't take any more of this. And a friend was kind enough to loan me her Canon 30D, and just to play around with while I was kind of recouping. And so I just started going out shooting stuff, and that really kind of started the photography bug back up. And somewhere along one of those trips out, I was out camping, and I was with a friend. I had the camera on a tripod to shoot the sunset, got lazy, left it up, and over the course of a few hours, the stars came out, and I was just mesmerized by the stars. It was beautiful. And I thought, I wonder if I can take a picture of that. And so I just started messing around with the settings, and somewhere in those messing around, like the most out of focus, blurry, terribly white balanced shot of the stars of Milky Way came out, and I was just like, oh! And I lost it then and there, and it's been nonstop since then.
When I first saw your shots, I thought that's some incredible Photoshop work. And and then as I started reading more about it and looking more into it, I said, no, that's real. That is amazing. Living around Atlanta, I never get a chance to see anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And how far away from a city would you have to get?
Well, first, let me reply to that one thing you said in regards to Photoshop. So before photography, back in New Jersey, we're not surrounded by giant coasts and mountains and stuff like that. And so I was going to stock sites to find the images to do these Photoshop manipulations that I was really getting fascinated in. And somewhere along the lines of moving out here, I started not being able to find the source footage that I wanted for some of the things. So I thought, maybe I could go out and shoot it. And I think somewhere along the line that it became like a self-challenge to sort of do in camera what I was trying to replicate in Photoshop. And since then, I found that it's incredible what you can actually do in a shot versus trying to manipulate and post digitally. So anyways, but you were asking how far to go out for star shoots?
Yeah.
All right, so light pollution is nasty, originally from Jersey, East Coast, and it's hard to get away from it. What I found out here is that if I can get 50 miles away, then that is usually the beginning tier of getting out of the city lights. 100 miles makes for some really nice star shots, and then 150 more miles or more, and you're in some pretty country. So that's kind of the distance. It's usually 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, and the star shots just get better the further out I go.
All right, so 3 hours away from any large city, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's kind of the problem with the East Coast is there's so many large cities that it's so hard. You go one way and you're starting to get closer to another city,
Exactly.
Yeah, I know. I'm from Long Island, so I have no choice. I'm not getting away from much.
Yeah, but you know what, Tim? The Adirondacks are not too far.
No, they're not. No.
Dark scars out there, yeah.
So, what would you suggest for somebody on the East Coast? I mean, where can they go?
There's a cool website. Let me Google it here. I want to say Dark Sky Finder. I'm putting that in Google right now. And the first link that comes up, yeah, so if you Google Dark Sky Finder, if I put that in the chat, will that show up?
Yeah.
All right, let's put that in group chat. So here's the link, and it's actually this jshine.net thing. So you go there, and it comes up with this sort of simulation of light pollution. I think it's actually based on population densities, not really actual light pollution. But you can kind of go to where you live and see just how big these cities are and maybe how far you got to go to get out of it. Now, the sad part is if you look, I mean, you can almost see this dividing line if you get to the site and start zooming out on the U.S. And the whole East Coast, or the whole east half of the state, is practically all yellow, green, and orange, whereas the whole west half has all these dark spots.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so that's kind of one visual representation. Now, there's another one. Let me see here. I want to say dark sky. Dark sky. I'll dig around for it, but there's another one that lists astronomy observation places. And so you can go to your region and you can find where astronomers are going, and that's a great place to start.
Yeah, so basically I'm looking at the Dark Sky Finder, and I want to go to where it's like, was that gray?
Yeah, gray's good.
Up here, it's out in the middle of the ocean for me.
Yeah, it's pretty far away from me, too.
And let's see, on the East Coast, one spot I've been curious about, there's one place called Cherry Springs State Park out in Pennsylvania. And according to astronomy numbers, it actually has some ridiculously dark skies for the East Coast. So that's out in like northwest Pennsylvania.
Well, you know,
that's a good 6 hours away from me.
Yeah, it's far out there.
You know, the other thing is so, you know, there's not a place around here for me that's easy.
Right.
It's something when I do travel out west, it's something to look at something like this and get some ideas on some places I can go to and have those pre-planned out.
Yeah, absolutely. Or just kind of that, you know, thought in the back of your head, like if you ever do make it out on a camping trip and you see the stars above you, you know, pop the camera out and try taking a picture. You'd be surprised what'll show up. You'll also be surprised at what light pollution does show up that you can't see with your eyes, but the camera will pick up. But I think just having that thought in the back of your head, like, you know, your camera's capable, you should give it a shot, you'd be surprised what you can pull out sometimes.
Yeah, so how long of an exposure are you having to take generally?
My magic formula that I like to go to is a 30-second exposure at f2.8 if you have a nice wide aperture lens, and ISO 3200. So you're just jacking the camera to let in as much light as possible.
So
right, so any light pollution would get picked up real quickly at those settings.
Yeah. You know, the light pollution is usually brighter than the starlight. So as you're trying to amplify starlight, you're also pushing the light pollution even further above it.
Yeah. So what kind of camera are you using to shoot that?
I'm using a Canon 5D Mark II. Before this, I was using the Canon 30D. The 5D Mark II has made some incredible advancements in the high ISO range, and it's been really exciting. I'm really desperate to get my hands on a 5D3 and shoot some stars, but sort of curious to see what happens with this 1DX monster coming out.
You know, I have behind me somewhere, I think it's right there.
Yeah.
Where if I can see it. That's my D2X, but that is like, it's an old it's old now. It was new when I got it, but it's old now. And I think if I shot at 3200, 30 seconds, I would have my own stars. Because you have so many hot spots on there that I'd have trouble deciding what was a star and what was a hot spot.
That's the truth.
Do you not have trouble with noise at that long of an exposure and that high of an ISO?
No, here's the deal is everyone has trouble with noise at this high ISO. The best way I can describe it is like if we took one of us and threw us into a marathon and we're like, all right, go get it, go run this marathon. You know, I don't know where we would pass out, but at some point we would pass out and we would look up at our friends and feel like, look how far I made it, I did so good. And I think our cameras feel the same way when they're taking these star shots. We are pushing it so far beyond what is their normal operating boundaries that noise is just part of it, you know what I mean? And so you have to accept that and understand that post-production noise reduction is also part of the process. And at least currently, with the cameras that most of us own, a clean star image is not really a reality. You know, I think some of these brand new ones just coming out, it is a reality, but at least for what most of us have, it's not.
Yeah.
Well, what you were talking about the camera and what your exposure is at an f2.8, but what size lens are you using? Obviously, it's got to be pretty wide angle, I would think.
Yeah. So the thing that I do differently than what astronomers do is, you know, they're taking a telescope and zooming straight up above them. I like to do the fancy terminology that I've heard is landscape astrophotography. So I need a wide lens to get the star sky above, but then I also want to get a horizon in it also. And by giving that horizon and the human element, that provides a scale for the viewers to kind of understand just how many freaking stars there are out there. So a wide lens is really important to get that third of horizon and 2/3 of sky. If I can, well, I'm really liking shooting with this new 14 millimeter that Canon has. Nikon has that insane, was it 14-24 f2.8? I think that's the Star King currently right now. But ironically, I didn't have anything that wide, and I shot on the 24-70 2.8. And I always wanted to go wider, but just didn't have the lens. And I think that because I didn't have that super wide focal length, I sort of had to resort to narrower things and tell the story with what was available. And I thought about it, and I think that actually affected the images that I got, and was probably more the reason I have like glowing tents and people or other things, because that's the only thing that could kind of fit in that narrow thing. And I think it's been a good problem actually.
You mentioned the glowing tents, and those adding the glowing tent, the people that are in it, the Jeep. I think that is just incredible. You know, we having those things in there. So I've got one right now. I don't know if you can see it in the chat. It's the one where you're laying down. You got the light on your forehead. You shine up in the sky, and you got your tent next to you. I mean, that is a fantastic shot.
Thank you.
Can you tell us a little bit about that one? Because I think you won an award for this one, didn't you?
Man, I tell you what, this is incredible. Won National Geographic Photo of the Year award, or National Geographic Travel Photo of the Year award.
Wow.
And sorry, I'm trying to pull up the screen that you guys are looking at. No big deal. So yeah, that's mind blowing.
Do you need me to put it in chat so you can see it?
I know what you're talking about. I was just trying to see whatever screen you guys were pulling off of.
It's on the live show for the podcast.
Oh,
if you're on the Now Studios, just click on live show.
It's playing an advertisement first.
Yeah, that'll last for about 15 seconds, and then that'll disappear.
Okay, cool.
I bet you're intimately familiar with this shot.
Yeah. Okay, so a person actually I didn't know, he invited me. I know him through online, Flickr and stuff like that. And he says, you know, is it getting an echo through my screen player? Are you guys okay?
Yeah, I'm not getting an echo.
Okay.
You should be able to hit mute on it on the bottom left of the picture.
Sweet.
Yeah, once our sound comes through, you will want to hit mute on that.
All right, we are muted. So anyways, this online contact said, hey, I'm going to Crater Lake. I was thinking of shooting stars. I know you're into shooting stars. Do you want to come? And out here in the Pacific Northwest, like, weather is unpredictable. And so I told him, I was like, man, I am not going to, you know, sign on for a trip unless, you know, we get closer. So I totally forgot about it. 2 days before he was going to leave, actually, no, it was the night before he was going to leave. He emails me. He's like, hey, the weather looks awesome. Do you want to do this? And I was like, oh, my God, we got to do it after I checked the weather reports. So I got like 5 friends to cover my work shift so that I could have the week off or whatever. And we go out there, and I'd shot a totally different shot, trying to get like more of the traditional landscape with the Milky Way and the stars, more of that sort of stoic / epic kind of shot, you know? And I've been working on that for about 3 hours. It was getting pretty late, getting pretty tired. We've been driving all day. And so my buddy Chip, he was standing next to me, and to sort of give some humor to the moment, I thought it'd be funny to just like flop back with a snow angel style. So I set a timer on the camera, turned my headlamp on. I was like, yo, Chip, watch this. And so I flop back, the camera clicks, and that takes the picture. And it actually sat in the hard drive for about 2 months before I pulled it out to process it, threw it up on 500 pics, and it went crazy over there. And I was like, wow, you know, I just thought this was a goofy shot. No. And so, yeah, so I was starting to enter some photo competitions, and the Nat Geo thing came up. and it was a big like toss up, like what am I going to put up? And I was like, nah, for the hell of it, let's throw this thing in there and see how it does. So actually, I entered the stoic traditional landscape and also this shot, and then the one with the goofy me just having fun is just like going crazy. So it's been wild.
You didn't know this was a hit right at first?
No, not at all.
Wow.
In fact, you know, I think for landscape artists, you know, we think like get rid of the people, you know, show it as perfect and as clean as you want. But there's like a massive shift going on in what audiences are connecting to, and they want a story. They want to be able to relate, like, you know what, that could be me laying there, or you know, they want to identify. And so I think the more that we can transition our minds to stop trying to get rid of people in our shots, but to include them, we're going to start hitting more gold mines. So,
you know, maybe it's just me, and everybody has their own opinion of different photos, but to me, if you take you and the tent out of the shot,
yeah,
it's a great shot still, but it's, you know, okay, yeah, I've kind of seen that. It's
yeah,
right. This has the human element to it.
Yeah, it really stands out because of that. Now, how long of an exposure was this? Do you know?
I'm just gonna take a guess that it was, I'm not sure. It would probably somewhere between 30 to 45 seconds to f2.8 3200 seconds.
So with that long of an exposure, I guess one, you had to remain really still for that entire time. Probably getting a little cold. Remain really still. But why did it not blow out the tent? The light in the tent.
The tent, I'd spent a lot of time beforehand balancing the lights. So before I actually get one shot that I consider a keeper, especially if the tent's involved, there's usually 45 minutes to an hour and a half of balancing lights and getting rid of those hot spots and turning things up, turning things down, moving the camera, angle, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of time and care put into the glow inside the tent.
So it's not as easy just walking up, slapping it on a tripod, and hitting the shutter.
I mean, photography is not that easy.
Sometimes it is, every now and then, but with these things, it's a lot of setup in the dark. It takes a while.
So what are you doing with the light to control it, to get it to be the right amount? Because you probably don't have a dial on the light to turn it down, do you?
Yeah, no, I don't. And most people, you know, think that you need a lot of light. But Tim, what you said, that those settings are so delicate, so a little bit of light goes a long way. In fact, usually every light source that I bring out there, I have to turn down somehow. So headlamp, camping lanterns, little flashlight, all these things work great. And light in the dark is very, what's the word I'm looking for? Malleable, I guess you could say. You can cover it, you can shift it, you can, I don't want to say bend it, but you can warp it, you can distort it, and it's very user friendly at that point. So, you know, if it's too bright, like throw a white T-shirt over it and watch the whole thing diffuse wonderfully. And so just that kind of creative stuff and testing it out is going to make a big difference.
Now, in the background, there's a few glows. Is that cities?
Yeah, so there's the light pollution. That shot, the Crater Lake is like hours and hours away from any near cities. I think the center one is a smaller community that might be like within 50 miles. And then I believe on the left is one of the larger cities that's almost like 4 hours away from that spot.
Holy mackerel. So that gives you an idea of what you're dealing with. You got a small city 50 miles away and another one 4 hours away.
Yeah.
And yet their light pollution is still coming through.
Yeah, it's a big factor.
That's amazing.
How long was that exposure again?
Somewhere between 30 and 45 seconds.
Yeah, so that light gets picked up easily, yeah.
Yeah. And then, you know, Mike, I don't know if you want to talk about that rule of 600 or 400
a
little bit later.
Yeah, let's go ahead and hit that now, because that is something before I watched it in your video, I had never heard of rule of 600. And then you mentioned there's a spin-off of that rule of 400, I believe. Right.
So you're talking about the rule of 600. Tim, you're asking how long is the exposure. So first of all, if you're dealing with a full-frame camera, then we have what's called the rule of 600. And that's the idea that you take 600 and divide it by the focal length of the lens. For example, if I have a 20-millimeter lens, put it onto my full-frame camera, divide 600 by 20, and I get 30, and that means 30 seconds maximum exposure before the stars start to move. Now, that's just like a general rule of thumb. It's not a hard set, like, finite thing. But then going to the crop sensors, which a lot of people have, you want to turn that 600 to 400. And so now if you have that same 20-millimeter lens, you're going to divide 400 by 20. So now you have 20 seconds usable time before the stars start to track.
Okay.
So we cannot connect that.
Well, look, I just this one just came up. I want to stop on this one.
Oh, that's cool. That's not my picture now.
That's not.
No, that's
Well,
someone
then
who put
let's
it
not
on the
stop on
face.
that one.
No, that one's beautiful though. Actually, why don't you put it back up there, Mike?
Okay. Well, I don't know who this is, so I hate to show it in
Oh,
person credit.
um, it's probably taking me a few minutes to find the guy. So I'm not taking credit for this image. Do some Google searches for Van Gogh Modern Starry Night Photoshop. But anyways, just wanted to touch on this, where this digital artist is really honing in on the magic and the fantasy of that moment. And in these night shots, I think we have an amazing chance or opportunity to sort of recreate stories and elements, not like this exactly, but the fantasy and the magic in the night is really exciting to try to unearth or discover. So beautiful shot, not mine, but definitely an inspiration for me personally.
And it is not, this is Photoshop, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, in fact, the guy's like an amazing multi-layer Photoshop visual world kind of thing.
It must be on your Facebook page because
Yeah.
I think I drew it out of the your wall photos.
Yeah, I think he just dropped a link saying, he was enjoying my work and I was enjoying his.
Why does it say you cannot do that?
Let me find one of the. Oh yeah, this one. If I remember right, that's your girlfriend's Jeep.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
That
a Jeep Wrangler.
That makes I don't know. It looks like it's just it. I really like the shot.
Looks like it might have been on the moon.
Yeah, yeah. Because what is that? What am I seeing in the background? Is that the Milky Way or something?
Yeah, that's the Milky Way arcing through. Again, going back to where do you go shooting stars? This is just up the hill from the Pine Mountain Observatory. So we went there and then found there was a hill that we could kind of shoot from. So it was a great shortcut to find a starry night spot. That's the Milky Way leaning up from the right side of the shot. And going back to how much time does it take to balance these Earth lights or the terrestrial elements? It took 2 hours at least playing with the stupid lock, unlock, and alarm buttons to make all the lights go off at the right amount of time and not too much time for that all to work.
Okay, because I was going to ask you if you took one shot of the sky, then drove the Jeep in and did another exposure and blended the two. What you're saying is you just hit so while it's in this 30-second or whatever, shutters, having a shutter open.
Yeah.
You just hit the key release, to make it blink the lights. So just for a split second, it blinks the lights, and that's why they're not overexposed.
Yeah, so going back to that original challenge to make images in camera and not rely on the Photoshop, it's like, yes, we could Photoshop this, but is it possible to get it in camera? And that's just like
that makes it more exciting to get it that way.
It does, yeah.
It's a hunt, man. You're
Right, the
on
hunt.
Yeah, and it's maddening, it's exciting, it's enthralling. It's sometimes you cry, sometimes you laugh. But okay, so yeah, it was just a matter of experimenting with do I push the lock button first, then the unlock, and then the panic, and then dive in and hit the dome lights, or what order of operations and how long for the whole thing.
Dive in and hit the dome lights. So did y'all do that?
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
And is it just because of the shutter length that I don't see you?
Yeah, so all those lights aren't on the same time, and if you're wearing dark clothes, then the camera's not going to pick you up. So I think it's hard to remember exactly what happened, but I believe I crawled around, kind of reached in and pushed the button while I'm hiding behind the seat.
Amazing.
It closed on, and then let it go again, and it goes dark, and then you just crawl out of the scene.
The more I learn about your photos, the more amazed I am. Because, when I first saw them, I thought, oh, Photoshop. But as I did more research, even before we talked, I realized, no, I think he's doing a lot of this in camera. But even ones like this, I said, there's no way. He had to have done something here. And then, you tell us what all you did to get it. It makes it even more amazing. That is crazy. Now, you said your girlfriend was with you?
Yeah, she was actually asleep. She was asleep back at camp. My buddy John, he was with me, helping me out.
Oh, okay.
She comes out with a lot of the star adventures for sure.
I was going to say, she's a keeper. She's willing to put up with a photographer spend that kind of time to set one of these shots up.
So that begs to ask the question then, if she's sleeping, that means these pictures are taken relatively late, early hours. Probably after midnight then.
Yeah, yeah. So, here in the summertime, it's so aggravating because all winter long we have these super long nights, but the weather is terrible. And so the summer finally rolls around, and then the nights get super short. So up here, up in the Oregon, I think in the middle of summer, it's like really for the Milky Way, you got to wait till 11 p.m. and then you're good till about 3 a.m. and that's really your super dark sky window. It's really short. But yeah, I pretty much just shoot until I can see the sky starting to lighten, and then it's like, oh, yep, guess we're done for now.
Well, I'll say living here in New York area, I don't know if I've ever seen the Milky Way. So,
Tim, I think I saw it once in the Adirondacks. I was backpacking.
Yeah.
And faintly saw it arcing, but from
Long Island out here, no, unless I'm upstate in New York, I'm not going to see it.
Yeah, it's a special thing, man.
It is.
That's a great shot right there.
The other
like
one,
the Milky Way is crashing through the Jeep.
Yeah, like that epic kind of feel.
I just happened to come to this one because it's at the end. Let's come back to that one. I don't know if you saw that, Ben. We'll come back to that one in a minute.
Sure, no problem.
There's one. Let's see if I can find it. I think I pulled too many of yours, but people who were in the pre-show got to see some of these. There's a house I want to see. I got it in here somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
Just bear with me. Oh, I want to come back to that one. The one
we can tell stories about all these. Every time you go out in the middle of the night, man, something crazy happens. It's guaranteed.
Is this the house? No, that's not the house.
Nope, getting there. It's not that one, though.
That's not the house. This, I think, is the house.
There's the house.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So go ahead and tell us about this house.
All right, so I actually did a little informal first try workshop with some friends, brought some people out there, and it was funny because there's some cows in the field next to it, and so you can't see the fence, but in our headlamps you just see these blinking, glowing eyes, and at some point they all started like stampeding, and I was like, "Run, everybody!" And we didn't know where they're going, but it's freaky in the dark. So we're there all night long shooting, and somewhere around 2:30, 3 a.m., start hearing this weird breathing noise, like definitely an animal, but no clue what it is. And so we tried to chase it off into the field, and it disappeared somewhere, and we let it go. So about an hour later, everyone was done. The sky was starting to get bright. It was like, all right, let's call it a night. So there's lights inside the house. Had to go inside and get them. And it's a creepy place. A little bit not as creepy since I was with the group, but it's creepy nonetheless. So, I'm tiptoeing all over these broken floorboards and stepping into the thing. And I walk into the living room, and there's like still some couch and easy chair in there. It feels weird. And I'm in the living room going to get my lights on the left, and over to the right, about 15 feet away in the doorway of the kitchen, is this giant porcupine.
Oh my God.
It is seriously the size of like an ice cooler. I've never seen a porcupine. I don't know if that's a big one or a normal size.
That sounds big to me.
He was just sitting there hunched over like a football linebacker just staring at me. And I could even scream, like, guys, it was seriously like this. I was like, and then I just like ran out of the house, man. It scared me so bad. It was freaky. Never seen anything like that.
Because what we got to keep in mind is why this looks, nicely lit to us. It was really, really dark for you, wasn't it?
Yeah. When you're there in person, there's barely a glow coming out of the house.
Yeah. Yeah. So right now it looks like, that's not bad. That's not too creepy. But in real life, that is just pitch black.
Yeah, it's pretty dark out there. Then there was another time, I don't know, I think it's a screech owl or a barn owl, I don't know, but I was at another abandoned house, and, walking around doing my thing, having a good time taking pictures, and then, like, I swear it was, what are those things from Lord of the Rings, the flying death horse things?
Oh, the Wraith.
Ring wraiths.
It was like a ring wraith. It was like, and then like dove down and trying to freak me out, and like Mike, I almost had my own food poisoning, poop in my pants. It was bad, man. I was so scared. So yeah, there's been animals all over the place.
That's crazy. Now this is yours, right? Because it does say BC.
Yes. Okay.
So this is a little bit different than what we've seen.
This is very different. In fact, this is probably one of the beginning inspirations for a lot of things. So this is a Photoshop composite. It's not a single image.
Okay.
The stars in the back are actually pointing straight up at the sky, and then the landscape is kind of like a dusk shot. But this is going back like 3.5 years ago. I'm not exactly sure when it was posted, but it was kind of like I'd been taking some star shots. They sucked. You know, they weren't that exciting. And in my Photoshop kind of imagination, I wondered, like, what could be something cool? Like, what shot would I want to get? And so just spent about 2 days kind of just working on things, trying to dream up the craziest scenario, and that's what came of it. Ironically, it got me a lot of attention on Flickr. I think it made Explore, and then I had to quickly explain that it wasn't real and whatnot. But that excitement really kind of thrilled me, like, well, like, what can be caught in camera?
Yeah.
And I believe that this shot is possible somewhere. I think on the equator, the North Star might fall on the horizon. I don't know enough astronomy for sure, but it is possible somewhere.
So that's what you have to do, is find a North Star and make that the center point?
Yeah. So this is not a 30-second exposure. It's more like a 40-minute exposure.
40 minutes?
Wow.
Yeah, so this is more the traditional star trails. So before all this high ISO started going crazy, like your D2X in the background, you could put that intervalometer onto our cable release and turn it to a 40-minute exposure. And instead of cranking the ISO, you're cranking that extended shutter length. So then you can turn down your ISO to a clean, ISO 100. And that's where a lot of people have those traditional star trail shots.
Yeah, I think I passed up another star trail shot that is probably, yeah, this one. That one is probably all in camera, right?
Yep, that's a 45-minute one.
45 minutes. That's just
Jeez.
crazy.
Yeah. It's fun. It's like, you kind of like guess the settings at best, and it's like, all right, see what happens, and then you push the button.
Right, you really don't have more than one shot at that.
No,
Yeah,
not
45
really.
minutes.
No.
Now, one thing we hadn't talked about is clouds. You had mentioned a little bit about the weather earlier, but if you're taking a 45-minute shot, or any of your star shots, you're really having to worry about the clouds, aren't you?
Yeah, clouds are a major factor. In the beginning of this star crazy passion, I would go out on the cloudless nights and make that the priority for the shots. As I've done a lot of shooting and kind of compared notes, I'm actually starting to like when I have somewhere between 10 to 30% of clouds in the sky. It adds this extra, another human scalable element that kind of adds another layer in the sky. And so, if you're patient and creative, you can work with clouds. It's not a game changer or game killer.
And one of the questions we got out in chat is, most of our cameras max out at 30 seconds.
Yeah.
So obviously you have to go to bulb mode.
Yeah.
And then you have to have some kind of remote shutter release.
Yeah, there's a really basic one, a cable release. It's, I think you have for like $20. You just push a button, slide it up, it locks it open. There's fancier intervalometers, the digital controls.
Right, I bought one of those on eBay a couple of weeks ago.
Nice, you're set, man. Yeah, those are...
Yeah, I just need to not have light pollution.
Something like this.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's exactly.
I don't know if y'all can see it in the little window I have up, but yeah, it's got a little digital readout, and I can set it to whatever time I want, and it connects to the camera with a little connector like that.
Yeah. And so what's nice about that is we have that 30-second limitation that you can go, 40 seconds, 5 minutes, 40 minutes, whatever you want. Those things will go really, really long. And then it's also cool, you can set a timer for it to count down before it takes the exposure. So, let's say you have your own 30-acre ranch, you don't want to stay out in the hills the whole night. You can set up in the daytime, set it for a 5-hour timer, go back home, and, theoretically it'll fire off in the middle of the night, take its picture, and then you can come back in the morning and pick it up.
Huh. Yeah. I don't know.
Now, you've always shot on digital, I guess, then.
Yes, yeah. I sort of jumped into things here on the digital revolution of things.
Yeah. All right.
But wait, one thing.
Yes.
I'm a big believer in just doing what you got to do to try out the shot. And so I never had one of those fancy intervalometer cable releases for like a year and a half into shooting stars. And there's a bunch of shots where like either I just sat there and held the shutter button down for like 2 minutes and bulb, or you just find a rock and tape it onto your button so you can get the shot,
Find a rock. Nice.
Don't let equipment stop you from trying. There's always going to be something more you can't afford or don't have.
Right.
And I'm a big believer in just try it, man. Try it and learn as you go and innovate.
And I'm sure that's going to be a big topic in our next conversation that we're going to have here in just a second.
Okay.
Your time-lapse thing. because that's probably even more challenging.
Oh my god.
So let's, now we've mentioned that, let's just go to that. And I wanted to, this is the photo that I found at the beginning, a minute ago that I said, but it's all the way at the end, so it's going to take me a second to get there.
Oh,
So,
there's a Jersey Star shot actually in that roll.
oh, do you remember what it looked like?
Yeah, there's it's a road going through the woods. It's a vertical composition with the center lane in the road.
See if I can find it.
Keep going, keep going.
There's a delay between what you're seeing and
Yeah.
what I'm seeing.
Oh, okay. I saw it
Oh, I
scroll
see it.
by.
I think it's this one. You'll see it in just a second.
Yep, that's it. Yeah, so that's New Jersey. That, you know, you can get stars. Now that's about the darkest spot that I could find in South Jersey, where I'm from. I was home on Christmas, hanging out with the family, and but it is possible, Tim. Now I'm not saying Long Island or whatever. But
Well, you know what? Like you said, don't let things stop you. You know,
Yeah.
the digital one. You know, and this is a D2H. Speaking of old cameras, D2H, 4 megapixel. Even though I live in an area that, you know, more than likely I'm not going to get anything good, taking pictures with it is pretty free. Get out there.
Exactly.
yeah,
Get out there and try it. If it doesn't work out, what are you out?
it probably means you spend a night out under the stars that you can see with your own eyes, and that's probably not a bad thing.
Exactly right. You know, I like to go camping several times a year with the kids,
Yeah.
and just go out there and take some shots. Now, in this case, what is that bright light at the end of the road?
That is some car coming, and I was playing chicken with it to figure out how long I should stay there. But
'cause
it's a super straight long road, so I can see it coming for a long
Okay, because you are in the middle of the road taking a long exposure shot. Yeah, that sounds great. Next you should go on some train tracks.
Yeah, there you go.
I've been on train tracks. I was on a train track bridge. That was scary.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that would be scary.
Yeah. Okay, so let me find this photo. You can see I have a whole bunch of these, and all of these are available on. We'll have some links to Ben's work, both on his webpage and on 500 Pics and on Facebook. We'll have all those links. So what you've done recently, you've been doing some time-lapse photography,
Yeah.
but just recently, I think in the month of March and April,
Mm-hmm.
you did one for the city of Portland.
Yes. Yeah.
And I don't want you to reveal any details you don't feel comfortable with revealing, but this was a paid gig, right?
Actually, no, it wasn't.
Nobody
Let's see
paid you
here.
for this work? They got a great deal.
We're trying to find some marketability here in the after side of things, but if you go back 6 months prior, we did an Oregon time lapse, and it was kind of Oregon wide. And so I don't know, are you familiar with TED.com or TEDx.com?
Yeah, I've heard of that. Yep.
Okay, yeah. So there's a Portland TEDx event, and the organizers of that were watching the news, and our Oregon landscape thing made the news, and so they're like, their theme for this year's TEDx was uncharted territory, and so they wanted that to go. So let me fast forward. We met with them. They're like, tell us about making the Oregon time lapse. And as we talked, this thing was about Portland. It was in Portland. It's city. It's urban. So like, well, we should shoot some Portland time lapse for this. I'm like, all right, that'd be great. We could use it in between sets. And they're like, okay. So we're figuring we'll make like a 30-second time lapse for this Portland TEDx thing. And as we sat down, we're like, all right, we need to ask as many locations as possible because we'll probably only get 1 out of 5 locations to say yes. So we sent out this big email blitz, TEDx, city, no money. Let's just make this awesome and represent the city. And every location said yes.
Wow.
And gave like amazing, unprecedented access to some incredible spots. So it was like, well, we can't not shoot it.
Yeah, including the one we're looking at here, where you're on top of a bridge. I can't imagine most people get to go up there.
Yeah. Ironically, we had asked for permission to take a picture somewhere else, and they had said, no, we can't do that, but we could let you up on top of, that's the Fremont Bridge. And we're like, what? We didn't even know you could go up there. So yeah, that's super high up, and it scared me. I don't like heights, and that kept freaking me out the whole time.
Yeah, well, you must. You did better than me, because I don't like heights either, and I'd never go up there. It was just, okay, I quit.
That reminds me. About 2 years ago, my friend works for the Port Authority of New York, New Jersey,
Yeah.
and he got me to the top of the George Washington Bridge.
Whoa!
Really?
I wish it would have been more of a clear day, and more amazing, you go up there, and it's an elevator that brings you about 3/4 of the way.
Yeah.
And then there's a couple of ladders you got to go up, or stairways you go up, and then an internal ladder that brings you to the very top of the bridge. And I had my son, who was, I think, probably 7 or 8 years old. I'll tell you, I'm terrified of heights. And now I'm bringing him up there with me.
You're crazy. You're crazy.
But it was an amazing view of Manhattan from the top of the GW Bridge.
Yeah, not many people. I've never heard of anyone been up there before. That's awesome, man. What an experience.
Yeah, exactly. It was just once in a lifetime.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, here's what you need to tell those guys, Ben, because I look at your video, your time-lapse video, and I want to visit Portland now.
Yes.
So somebody needs to be paying you for that video, because that is probably the best advertisement the city of Portland has ever had.
Well, we're making some relationships with the Travel Portland, the tourism bureau here in the city, and you know, time-lapse is weird because it's hard to sell it before you do it. A lot of people sort of, you know, they know it's hot, but unless you have a big, long history of sort of viral home runs, people really don't believe what you're saying it's going to be. And we had talked to them beforehand, like, man, this is going to be awesome. You guys should jump on board. And, you know, now here, way after it's kind of been proven that they're interested in. So for those out there doing time-lapse, like, you've just got to believe in your idea and just go all out. And you got to make it as big and as bad and as awesome as you can. And then just sit back and, you know, have no regrets that you worked the hardest that you can and see what comes of it.
Yeah, and for the people out in chat or listening to us later, I'm not going to play the video during the show because one, it has audio. And you really want this, to me, the audio is awesome too. And you guys did such a great job of blending that together. There's one, I don't think it's the Finding Portland. I think it's maybe Finding Oregon, where it kind of, the video slows down and then all of a sudden, boom.
Yeah.
Sound like that? I get goosebumps every time I listen.
Awesome. Awesome.
That one is tremendous. And I'll have links to all of these. So we're going to talk about them now, but I'm not going to actually show it to you.
Sure.
But you know, one, I feel a little uncomfortable showing your video during this podcast. I want people to go to your site, into your place, and watch it there. We'll have links to it. But let's talk about the Finding Portland one, because that, you guys did it in an incredible amount of time. You know, less than 2 months. But how many photos did you take during that process?
First, you know, I'm working with a video production company called Uncaged the Soul Productions, and that really started this whole time-lapse thing. I was doing the night photography, as we talked about, and then the guy that ran this video production company, he asked me to do time-lapse work for a short film that he was doing. And so started doing that. We hit it off really well. And then this year, we've just been going time-lapse crazy. So really, all this time-lapse has happened under the Uncaged the Soul Productions sort of name and reputation, really. So, you know, I got to give credit there where it's due.
Okay.
But yeah, okay, so going back to this thing, you know, TEDx is awesome. We knew it had to be great, so we just went as big as we could. 308,800 something individual photos taken. I think we burned through all our camera shutter life in this one project.
How many cameras would that spread across?
3 of them. It was a 5D2, a 1D4, and a 7D.
And yeah, 3. I saw your Lightroom catalog.
Yeah.
I think that was Lightroom, right? That was Lightroom.
Yeah, it's Lightroom. Yeah.
308,000 or whatever it was. Images.
Every time we kept downloading, I was like, sooner or later, it's just going to explode. Like,
yeah,
you know,
really.
The book will come out, it will die. There's no way. But it kept on going, man. I don't know if there's a limit to that thing.
And y'all had to do some crazy things. There's one where people are packing stuff into a into a car.
Yeah.
And then the video looks like it comes out of the car. Did you have to remove that window?
Yeah, we definitely had to do some modifications to the vehicle. And, you know, in this project, we just didn't want to do Portland time-lapse, but we wanted to really be innovative with the moves and motions that we were doing. We're like fully on board that one of the big magic factors of time-lapse is incorporating motion, you know, moving that camera. And so my partner, John, that was his idea. And it was cool because at some point, I forget what we were doing, but he's like, whoa, I got an idea. He's like, the camera moves through the roof, through the bike rack while we're driving. And I was like, what? And then, you know, we just sit down like, is that possible?
Wait,
and then,
you were driving in that shot?
Oh, yeah, man.
I got to rewatch that. I thought that was still.
No, we covered like 30 miles in that.
Holy crap. How are you not getting bumps?
There are bumps. You know, the other side to things with time-lapse is the post-processing is a bear. So that's actually a 3-bracket HDR motion time-lapse. And so there's a lot of smoothing out, flickering with the bumps, you know, tone mapping, blending, et cetera, et cetera. It gets crazy. So a lot of post work.
It's got to be. And then you had another shot where y'all were in a boat, I would imagine, going across the water, and that had to have bumps in it too.
Actually, that boat was so smooth. It was a rather large one, and we caught it on a pretty wind-free night. But just by the size of the ship itself, it really canceled out all the wake, and it turned into an incredible motion.
Yeah, it was. It was. So, you know, you mentioned a lot of your shots, the camera is moving. How are you moving the camera? Because sometimes it looks like it just kind of slides over. Even one shot, I think it came like outside this, off the side of the building.
Yeah. So we're using a system. It's made by Dynamic Perception. It's called the Stage 0 time-lapse dolly, and it's literally this metal rail that exists off of construction equipment, and they've got a platform. It has a belt and a motor and a pulley. The camera goes on top, and that whole thing just goes across the rail. And depending on how you set it up, it can rise up, it can turn up, it can go out, all kinds of things. And what's really exciting is that they've sort of figured out how to affordably also give pan and tilt options. And so, you know, there's this whole background sort of geek squad of time-lapse guys that have been doing this motion stuff for over 5 years now, really breaking incredible ground. So they figured out how to hack a telescope mount. So normally a motorized telescope that follows the moon and the stars, they can hack into it, and I can tell it to pan left or pan right or look up or look down while it's moving across the rail. So that's where you get that XYZ axis motion. And you know, it's done on less than $1,500 worth of equipment.
Wow, that's what was going to be my question: is how much is not that expensive? $1,500. Well,
Yeah,
for doing that, that's not expensive. Now, that's a great deal.
What's incredible is there's TV stations that are using that for their full-blown TV studio productions. You know, so it's fascinating.
So, you know, you 300,000 photos. It took you a long time just to take the photos. How long did it take you guys to edit all that? And then I got to imagine you got down to some smaller number of 300,000 of the photos and had to render the video. Yeah.
I tried to keep up with it in the beginning, and then the shooting opportunities just started piling up, and there's no way to render while we were going. So we kind of just went all the way till we had 2 weeks before the TEDx event, the final presentation. We were showing this video that wasn't made yet, and so like, okay, we got to stop shooting because we have to make this thing. And it was like a 2-week no sleep, live at the office, no weekends, just work like crazy. In fact, my buddy John, my partner, his dad came up, brought his big bad Mac tower and another iMac. So we had 2 iMacs, 2 towers running simultaneously, rendering, crunching, and processing. And I think we ended up with like 260 final time-lapse sequences, and there's only 65 in the final piece. So there's a lot of work where you have to see everything out and then pick the ones that you want to use. And then we went back with a fine-tooth comb and repolished those to make it the best it can be.
Well, you know, I'm just amazed that y'all were able to bring all that together in 2 weeks.
Yeah, really.
Not talking about the rendering part, but just the deciding which shots to use and the sequences and all that. And was this shot in RAW or JPEG?
Everything's shot in RAW.
And how much post-processing per image did you have to do?
They're all, so the easiest one is an indoor time-lapse, you know, consistent lighting, not a lot of flickering and all that stuff. That's nice and simple. Motion adds complexity. Changing light adds incredible complexity, like a sunrise and stuff. So really it depends on the specific one, but like a sunrise single time-lapse, like let's say one of the ones that finally made it, you're probably looking at 14 hours of processing to get that 1 6-second clip.
God. Oh my God!
You know what, Tim? You got to watch this several times, because I watched it the first time, I'm just amazed. Then I watch it again, I start going, wait, how do you do that? And then maybe the third or fourth time, it starts hitting me. Wait, how did he get the exposures to be so consistent? I don't feel like the exposures are bouncing around. You feel like you're watching video.
Yeah.
It just, and But the thing I love is how the speed changes. It's not a consistent speed.
Yeah.
The exposure is consistent. And I thought to myself, that had to be a lot of post-production work.
There's a ton. You know, I don't want to get too in depth in this.
Yeah.
First of all, my buddy John, he loves the time ramping. Like he loves like, and then slows down and pulls back out. Like he loves that. And then that all really syncopates up to the music. You know, we really rely on that sound score to tell a story. And so that was a custom track done by a composer here in Oregon. A lot of love and labor of love on his part. But anyways, back to what you're talking about, how it looks like video. There's an amazing short window opportunity where what we can do with our DSLR cameras can rival that of current top video like production cameras. So, okay, so you got the Red Epic, right?
Yeah.
It produces 4K video, like insane dynamic range for a video camera. And there's no video camera that you can't afford for less than $20,000 that will do the same. But our single DSLR still image shot at RAW does have that much exposure value as the Red Epic video does. So basically, if we can take still images and turn it into video, then all of a sudden we enter in this super high-end, high dynamic range video world because we're using time-lapse into movies. And then the thing that's really opened up is HDR photography. You know, we're doing 3 brackets, 5 brackets, 7 brackets, where it's not just one single exposure, but we're doing a positive, and you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, yeah.
So like most of those sunrise shots are 7 bracket HDR tone map shots where in that 7 brackets, spaced 2 stops apart, basically 14 stops of light going through that whole time lapse. And so when I start at pre-dawn and it's dark, my very bottom bracket is exposing for that super dark light, and then as it shifts 45 minutes through the sunrise, my top bracket is exposed for that very bright daylight. And then in post, there's these new software programs where you can literally float through the value range of those 7 bracket HDRs and literally follow the light as it transitions. It is incredible, and like that, these programs are just getting out of beta this year, so it's really exciting right now.
Are those programs just for the Mac or also for PC?
No, it's for PC. Currently, it's under the After Effects engine. The plugin is called Ginger HDR, and again, that works with After Effects. And so, it converts the 7 brackets into an EXR. You take your EXR sequence into After Effects, and then you open this thing up, and you work into that 32-bit floating whatever, blah blah blah. It's crazy, man. Sometimes I get in there, I'm just like, oh my god, what have I done? And it gets scary, man. It's heady. I mean, it's so frustrating because the render times just get longer and longer and longer, and so you be wise if you go shooting.
When you're under a 2-week window, though, you don't have a whole lot of time to go, oh my god, what have I done?
Yeah, really.
You got to keep yourself and keep going.
Yeah, and then to be learning on the fly is brutal. So like so much of what we shot in the beginning and what I try to process versus 40 days later, I had to completely go back and apply what I learned through that process, and it completely changed and opened up shots I thought were no good. And in the whole way, I'd kind of learned to figure out how to deal with the various things.
And that's something that what jpeg2RAW about is learning from our mistakes and doing better in the future. So I'm sure, as great as this video or time-lapse video is, you got to be thinking the next one I want to do it different. Like, I want to do this thing different.
Yeah.
What would be your main lessons that you're willing to share with us that you'd want to do different in the next one?
In this one, kind of learned the power of this whole 7 bracket HDR thing. I thought it was possible to do a 3 bracket HDR, and then if the light changed, I could just shift my exposure thing and then kind of like blend it later. And that doesn't work at all. You just have to set the time lapse and step away. You can't change it midstream. But let's see, on a more abstract, not so techno level, the power of story. Don't just look for a pretty shot. But going back to that Crater Lake image, look for a scene that your audience can connect with. Give them an opportunity to feel like they're there. If you can find a bench where they can imagine themselves sitting to look at the city, show the bench looking at the city. Don't just show the city.
That's a great tip.
That's simple stuff that it isn't dependent on how expensive your camera is or whatever. that ability to really take in the scene around you is always new.
And you had one other tip that we talked about during that you remember once I bring it up when we talked in the pre-show is, whenever you take 300,000 photos, I'm sure when you're under this window of time where you got to complete it, you're also worried about protecting that data, worried about losing all that stuff. And you had
I can't even imagine that.
You had a hard lesson early on in your photographic career.
Yeah.
And this is something I'm sure people listening getting tired of me preaching about it, but sooner or later somebody's going to say,
"Thank you, Mike.
Because of all your preaching, Mike, you saved my photos." So,
all right, so
Ben, why don't you give us your story?
jpeg2RAW. I got to chime in with Mike, and I learned this the hard way, as the song goes. So last year, I was using one external hard drive to back up all my star shots. I'm coming home with like 40 gigs of pictures. My hard drive is filling up quick. Went out, bought a nice 2 terabyte drive, started filling that up, and I knew that I should back up to another source, but I just didn't have the money for it. And I couldn't justify scrounging up another $300 to get a drive. And I knew at some point I had to. I knew at some point I needed to. I just kept putting it off. So anyways, I'm at the kitchen table doing editing. Someone called me across the room. I get up, trip on the power cord, yank the hard drive off the table, slams on the floor, and hard drive gone. Everything's corrupt. Take it in, ask them to recover it, and they say, only recoverable in a clean room, basically a $2,000 to $5,000 recovery fee. And so like, right there when I tripped on the cord and saw it falling, it was like, oh my God, why did I not spend the $300?
Yeah.
And one more thing to this is that in this whole process, especially last year, there is this really topsy-turvy transition where I wasn't making any money on the photography. I was doing what I love, trying to make it the best I could be, but there really was no money coming in for it. And you have to protect yourself to find some way to value what you're doing so you can build that type of data security, some of these other things, business plan, blah, blah, blah. Like, I'm terrible at all this planning stuff. I just go with it and make it happen, but I'm learning on the way. There's so many mistakes that I've done because I haven't planned well, such as data backup and stuff. And so spend the $200. Right now, I have 40% of my shots last year that I can't sell in prints because I don't have the original raw photos. I only have internet resolution. So right there, I could pay for 4 hard drives in the print request from last year's shots.
Yeah.
So make it a priority.
That's a hard lesson to learn. And you mentioned organizing all that. What I hear is the thing to become successful in the photography business is more about the business side. And that would include not everybody has your talent, but there are a lot of talented people out there, and the people who are going to become successful, either them or they find a partner that is good at the business side.
Yeah. I read the books also starting out and say, like, you read the guys where they say, I love photography. Before I was a business, so I'd shoot all the time, and now I shoot 10% of the time, and it's 90% business. And I was like, that's a bunch of BS, man. You need to figure out how to prioritize your time. But now, as the opportunities have grown, a kind of situation like this, other requests for images, et cetera, the business end is massive and overwhelming. And probably the one thing that I didn't hear anyone talk about when I was sort of reading the books is that as you get better and end up in some sort of limelight through these photo sharing sites, everyone who wants to do what you do will send you emails asking how you do what you do. And so either you're a jerk who just ignores them, or you at least try to take some time to answer the questions because you're trying to help someone out who's learning also. And so that's a major time, consumption right there also. And there's so many things that come up that you just don't realize. And it's true, the business end of things, like right now I'm trying to figure out, how do I move forward profitably, and I'm overwhelmed. It freaks me out. It's not a skill set that I have. And there's a lot of learning that I need to do. And I kind of wish that I'd set up a lot of the framework beforehand and taken serious some of those books I just tossed aside and looked for the pretty pictures.
Well, I wish you a lot of luck with that because you have an incredible talent.
Thanks, man.
And,
amazing. It is
Thanks
amazing.
a lot, Tim.
Later, whenever you're super famous, just remember, throw us a bone every now and then and come on a show again at some point.
I'd be happy to.
and this is a good time to end it because we are at the hour mark.
Jeez, that went fast.
It does go fast. And if you remember, we are going to do one little thing after the show. So we're starting a new thing that's like called jpeg2RAW highlights.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody wants to listen to the hour and a half. Sometimes our shows have gone on 2 hours because it just can drag out. So we're going to do a little shorter segment and hopefully keep maybe the big show a little bit shorter.
Yeah, right.
And then do a little bit of segment afterwards. So we're going to go ahead and end the regular show here. And chat will be back in just a minute. But everybody in chat who made it out tonight, thank you for coming on off.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Listening to my voice. I'm sure you're wondering.
You actually sound better as time's been going on.
Well, thank you. Thank you. People are probably wondering what in the world is wrong with him. But if you listen to the first part of it, you understood. And we'll be back next week at our regular time on Tuesday. I will be watching what I eat.
Yes.
No more Chick-fil-A.
No more Chick-fil-A. You don't have those out there, do you?
No, we don't.
It's a nice place. Do you have them up there in Tennessee? I mean, in New York?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We also got White Castle up here.
Oh, that's what we're talking about.
Okay. For what I understand, Chick-fil-A is several layers above in quality from a White Castle. But we'll
it's all right. White Castle's still good.
We'll leave that for others to debate. So everybody, again, thank you for coming out. We'll see you again next week. Hold on 1 second.